Welcome to From Doubt to Destiny,
the podcast where dreams come alive. I'm Eden Ryder, the Dream Maker.
And I'm Stacie Trott, the Queen Maker. We're here to give your dreams the royal treatment that they deserve. Get ready to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams.
I am Stacie Trott, here with my co-host,
Eden Ryder.
And we are having an episode today. Every episode, we're going to give you a topic, the tension around it, some transformational thoughts that we're going to uncover and discover while we're talking, and then takeaways, hopefully something to challenge you with. So today's topic it's a very interesting one. We thought a lot about how to package this one, and hopefully we'll land where we think we're starting, which is, how do I say this? Grateful and ... And we're going to talk about kind of how you can be grateful, feeling blessed, any kind of positive word on this side, and have a separate feeling that kind of almost feels like the opposite of grateful, and how both of those things can be true. So just as a very kind of just intro example, talking to a dear friend, kind of venting about stress, and also saying, but I feel guilty because I'm venting about stress and I'm so grateful. And she responded, grateful and happy are two very different things, and you can be grateful and unhappy at the same time. And I thought, yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling. I'm feeling unhappy about some of the things in my life that cause me stress and anxiety, and yet I still feel very grateful and blessed. And so Eden and I thought it would be a great topic to talk about because we found, as we started talking about this, a lot of areas where this tension existed. So why don't Eden, you can fill us in on kind of one of the new recent developments in the last 4 to 5 weeks. What's going on in Eden's world today?
Well, I know I was very pregnant. I think last we spoke in the last few episodes. And so he has now welcomed, he's in the world. So he's actually here with me today. He's a little bit off camera sleeping, and hopefully he will stay that way throughout this. But this is Bomani. So I had him a few weeks ago now. I think it's been about a month. So in the early... Well, it's my second, so not new to motherhood of 2, and just those like postpartum phase and doing all the things a lot quicker. When you have 2, you kind of have to, life's still going on. 2-year-old is ready to go, and she doesn't stop just because her brother is here. So definitely in that space right now, which it was interesting. We were thinking about this. It's very much that, like, I'm so grateful for all of this. These are all like dreams of mine coming true, but it's adjusting again. Like, I'm grateful, but I am very exhausted. I'm grateful, but I'm figuring out, like, how do I make sure Zaria is still getting all the attention from me and not feel like I'm quote unquote failing, that she's used to having all mommy time and now I have another little one that needs my time. So it was very on topic with just my life at the moment, and it made me start realizing all the times in life that I felt that tension, and just like those two like kind of polarizing feelings at the same time.
Grateful and I think one of the things we try to do, and even when we were talking offline prepping for this, you were like, oh, it's all fine. It's fine. And I'm like, well, no, maybe it's not fine. You're super tired, and your 2-year-old's having tantrums, and, you have a little human who wakes up in the middle of the night and wants to breastfeed constantly. And so grateful and I guess blessed is a good term to use for the season of like healthy mom and baby coming through delivery, which is a miracle in and of itself. And yet it gets really bumpy on the other side of having a brand new life to take care of while you have another life to take care of, and your husband's away filming and just kind of nannies and all the things, right? And it's just like there's a lot to juggle, and you kind of liked a certain rhythm to your life, and it's probably all off rhythm right now.
And finding a new normal.
And I think being able to say, I'm grateful, but I'm also have areas where I'm not satisfied, or I'd like something to change, or this is really hard. and being able to say that and acknowledge that. So in this topic, I guess that we've kind of highlighted the tension, and the big thing for me was, how do we help people, specifically women, being we both are women and we talk to a lot of women, so we kind of know a little bit about the vibrations of what women are feeling right now, is how do you help women hold the tension between being able to say I'm grateful, and yet I feel this other thing that kind of pushes up against the gratefulness. And one of the things for me is, I think, really important is, I want women to be able to acknowledge the kind of not so fluffy positive feelings, because to deny them keeps them trapped from maybe coming out with our mouths, but then they come out in other ways. So I think I've shared that I'm doing EMDR therapy, and it's like more paying attention to your body and how it feels and where you feel things. And if you're not connected to things needing to get out, your unwillingness or fear of saying, like, this is really hard and I want to say all positive things about being a mom or a new mom again, but there's some negatives that come along with it, that you have to take the good with the bad. I think every parent would say there's parts of parenting that is super challenging, and we are just in the beginning stages of it, right? I have a 6-year-old and you have a 2 and now a less than 1-year-olds. So we haven't even gotten to like the teenage years where there's all different kinds of bumpiness that come along there. But it doesn't mean we don't love our kids, but there's still a lot of tension, and there's parts that make you go like, oh my goodness, like this is really hard. How do you create the space to say the hard things while also wanting to acknowledge, and I'm grateful? Any thoughts around how you kind of manage that tension?
I think for me, it's been, which has come up a lot, is I don't say the idea of permission, but giving yourself permission, like of letting go of that guilt and letting go of, again, the shoulding. It's a lot of the, like,
Explain the
you.
shooting for any first time listeners.
So the shoulding is that I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And it's always not coming probably from you. It's from maybe like society, someone else, like all of these pressures that you feel like are placed on you or how you're supposed to be acting. So
From the vase. The
from
vase.
the
Let the
vase, yes. Yeah.
vase. Yeah.
All these
So
people we
caveat I
can't
want to add.
name.
I want to add to the
Yeah.
shitting is that sometimes it's societal pressures and the theys, who we never know who they are, but we're like, they say or they said. But then sometimes it's actual humans in your life that are applying
Oh,
pressure
yeah.
to you, right? For me, when it came up for me, it was in the context of being an associate in law and people telling me I was not making the right career path choices and decisions for how I was being trained. And I was developing this global international experience, and they were like, you're not doing enough of this other stuff. And I'm like, well, more of this keeps coming in and I'm really good at it, and I did some of this already, and now I'm kind of like expanding. And they were shitting on me and they were saying, you should be doing this though, and you should be doing that, and it was everything that I wasn't doing. And I morphed into this amazing career that, if I had listened to them, the shitting would have dimmed my light, I think. It would have prevented me from growing to where I've gotten to today. It just, so don't let, and my takeaway from it when I was having this talk was, I was letting people shit on me. And I'm not trying to curse, I'm not trying, but it's a thing about, don't get caught up under people telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's great to get advice, take that in, put it through your filter, what feels right, move in that direction, but don't let someone else's voice be louder than your own internal voice. And that internal
Yeah.
voice is guiding you in a way that's telling you, go this way, this feels right. And I'm so grateful. It was really hard though to follow how I was feeling led because of the shitting. So I think shitting
Yes.
makes it really hard to listen to your own instincts. So just wanted to kind of highlight the shitting. Because if you're listening to this and you've never heard this phrase, I think I made it up. I don't remember ever hearing it anywhere. But shitting can make listening to your own gut instincts really hard, because sometimes their voice becomes louder than yours, and you have to recalibrate that, the sounds, so you can hear you louder than the theys, the thems, or the actual real life human beings. I think that's the hardest one, is when they're tangible
Yeah.
people that you might respect, even admire, or that are further along in a journey than you are. And so you think, well, they must know. The reality is none of us really know. We're all just trying to figure it out. So don't let the shoulding kind of take you off of what you feel like you really should, you feel like you should be doing. Okay, so the shoulding, giving yourself permission. I wrote letting go, giving permission. So you were
Yeah, I think that needs to be a whole other podcast episode, by the way.
shoulding.
Listen, yeah. Like, I think
Don't let
it might
people
need
should
to.
on you.
But I realized in it, it was almost this again, even going back to like being a good girl, like I should just be grateful for all this. So me having any other feeling outside of gratitude means I'm not grateful, or like that I'm
Yeah.
almost not, yeah, I'm not grateful for it, or I'm almost pushing, I don't know, not like pushing it away, but then I'm not just, yeah, grateful, love my life, like that I didn't want all these things, that it's almost like a
Yeah.
negative thing. So I have found that it's interesting. I think in the times when I feel that way, gratitude is probably the last thing I'm actually feeling. It's almost like a quantifier, a qualifier of like, well, if
Yeah.
I say I'm grateful, I'm then like me. Even again, when we talked about like, I think that like Barbie speech, it's like, but we have to be grateful while we're doing
Yeah.
everything. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
conditioned in you that you need to be grateful for all that you do have. So if you
Yeah.
ever feel like, if you again are blessed and have all these things, that any feeling outside of that is like, oh no, like this is wrong. So you're
Right.
placing all of these like judgments on it. So for me, what I think has helped is realizing I'm likely not actually feeling grateful,
Yeah.
that because
Okay.
that other feeling is so strong. So
Mm-hmm.
giving myself permission to feel those other feelings, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to take away from, yes, I do feel blessed. I know that I have so many amazing things going on, and a lot of this I wished, prayed for, all of those things. But right now in this moment, this other emotion is very strong, and it needs my attention to recognize it and actually be able to quantify like, what is this I'm feeling, so I can like make my next like decision, or even get to a new emotion. If I don't recognize what this is
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling, and like you said, if I sit here and suppress it and pretend I'm so grateful, then it's going to show up down the line. It's going to, even for me, I found like it's stirring beneath me. So I feel like, whether like, if it's like, again, if I'm like focused on being exhausted, or like I'm so stressed out, typically that just builds. Like all I'm
Yeah.
focusing on is that. So that just even becomes more magnified in my life,
Mm-hmm.
where when I've given myself permission to recognize, oh, I'm feeling this, what is that? I can then like move on from it and move through
Yeah.
it. And
Yes.
then, interestingly enough, gratitude actually is one of the things which we can go to like as takeaways or transformation that does help me get through it. But I need to actually get to a space where I'm back to like, I don't even know if it's like neutral, that those things, that gratitude can help then amplify like those positive feelings, and actually
Mm-hmm.
feeling back in alignment. But for me, that I'm grateful and, or dot dot dot, or but,
Yes.
shows me that I'm out of alignment somewhere, and I need to like recalibrate, or love reframing. Like I have work I need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a negative thing, but it is like a warning sign of like, okay, something is going on that needs your attention. So stop thinking how you should be acting, should be feeling, and like, let's focus on what this actual, let's name what this feeling is, and like go from there.
I love the ability to give yourself the permission. And when you said reframing, what I thought was, how can I reframe it if I haven't acknowledged it? So
Right.
part of the acknowledging it is necessary for me to then reframe it. And reframing is a big thing. It's important. It's how we can reorient ourselves to look at it and see it from a different lens. But we have to acknowledge what we're first seeing that needs to be reframed. I can't reframe nothing. So
Right.
I have to give myself something of truth to then say, okay, now how do I want to switch and pivot on this? So I love the idea of giving yourself permission to get it out, say it. I just had dinner with a girlfriend last night, and we were talking about, I won't be TMI, but all these things with being a woman, I'll just say that like I was like struggling with and thinking like, oh, I'm just like, it's me, I don't know what I'm doing right, and I'm like, let me switch this product and she was like, no girl, I'm having all these issues too. And I'm like, oh, so it kind of just freed me from this feeling of like I'm doing something wrong
Yes.
by just saying out loud, I'm really actually having like these like things that are just kind of popping up that are weird. And she's like, no, me too. She's like, I landed one day from a trip and I was like, I'm going to urgent care. I don't know what's going on with my body. And like, but just having this conversation, I exhaled. There's so much internal, I'll call it unfortunately, for lack of a better term, like negative dialogue that when you get it out, all of a sudden there's this permission to like exhale. And so I think that's a big part of like, I guess if you're listening to this conversation, I would say consider with a girlfriend, with your journal, with your partner, your spouse, a parent, just pick a person in your life that you respect and trust. And I challenge you, or we challenge you to say, what am I grateful for? But and and just get some of that stuff out that maybe you're not giving yourself permission to acknowledge that you feel. And you may want to reframe it, or you may want to just be like, this is how I'm feeling about this thing. I think part of how we got here in on this podcast was we both felt there was like a need for more, an outlet, a space for conversations. When Eden and I were talking a few days ago, or was it yesterday? Oh, I hear Bomani. Is he getting up? No. We were talking about wanting to build community with a space for conversations that we're not seeing. And if they're happening somewhere, we're just not, it's not hitting our radar. And it's really this kind of holistic conversation about things that affect women's lives in more than one dimension. So there's a lot of spaces where people are talking about business things, but what about being a wife? What about being a mom? And having a business life too. Like, what about the tension around all of those different hats? And those are kind of the three big ones we could think of. There's probably also more. There's responsibilities that come with being a sister, being a friend, being a daughter. Like, I don't want to pretend those three other hats I just thought of aren't important. So, grateful and is really important because I can think of a litany of things that I could put on the other side of and. Tired. I woke up this morning and I was like, if you want to record today, we're recording. But if you don't want to record today, I realize that if I feel tired and I only have a 6-year-old who's primarily sleeping through the night, I have no idea what you feel like this morning, but I'm guessing it's probably worse than me. So just grateful and tired, or exhausted, or not always feeling grateful. Maybe I'm grateful in my head, but in my heart, I've got some resentment. And I got to work through some resentment so I can actually feel grateful and not just think grateful is what I should be feeling. How about that part?
Absolutely. Right.
I have that a lot sometimes. It's like, okay, no, I can't feel bad about this because I should feel grateful. But no, I actually am not feeling really good about this, but I should feel grateful. But no, I'm not feeling grateful. I'm actually feeling frustrated and angry. And just giving yourself permission to acknowledge, okay, I don't feel grateful right now because this other thing is overwhelming me, but I want to get to where I feel grateful. So how do I do that? So what's another outlet that you utilize? I'm thinking of one specifically that I think you use, but therapy being, so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about maybe how therapy is helping. And then the other one I think might be helpful too is you're doing coaching now. And so, or
Yes.
at least you're finishing up the certification around it. And so is any of that helping too? Because I have some thoughts around that.
Absolutely. The therapy's actually, Isaiah's one that helped me with even realizing that tension of if you keep quantifying this like that, but I'm grateful that he was like, you're likely, like, you aren't really feeling grateful. So you're pushing,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, you're pushing that away. Like, you're using it as almost like it's an obligation to feel that, which means you're likely not feeling it.
Actually
So,
feeling it.
yeah. So, therapy definitely helps because I think a lot of times, at least for me, again, recognizing that emotion that like, okay, let's name this, and then not judging it. Like it doesn't need to be. I think we'll say everyone, but for me, it's always that like good curl part that comes up that there's like good and bad, and I should be acting this way, and I should be that. So I in the past have had a tendency to place judgment on a lot of things like this is good, this is bad, like everything doesn't need to be like there's negative emotions, yes, that maybe don't feel good, but it can come up for like a positive reason. So I can like use, again, I guess that's a reframe, that this is coming up for me to address, and it doesn't need to be, I guess, the norm. Like I feel like we like can normalize that, like even for me, like having two, like when I was talking to Isaiah about like in therapy about this idea of feeling overwhelmed, our imaginations tend to run wild, but in like negative directions. Like it's can be at times so easy to be like, well, I'm gonna have two kids, so it's gonna be very overwhelming, or like I'm not going to like going through this like litany of things that are gonna go wrong. Where Isaiah had me realize, like, so you're using your imagination, so you have it, which is great, but you're using it to run rampant and wild in a way that doesn't serve you. So if it's going into all like of these negative things, like there also is a slew of positive situations that could happen as well. So if we can go in reframing that direction. So if I'm like feeling, even with right now, like exhausted, I am, but I found the more that I concentrate on that, it's again, I feel like it just breeds more of it, where I do need to recognize it, but then I'm like, okay, how would I want this perfect world to be going instead? And the more I can recognize how I'm feeling and start heading that other direction, or start focusing on how I want it to be instead. Again, I don't know if it's from the gratitude or just I'm done in that space, I start to see more of that. Or like I feel like I even maybe recognize it in Zari more. I'm like, okay, she's sensing maybe like my energy shifting, so she's not just giving me more of like another little tantrum, where I just start seeing like moments of like, okay, like this is a stage, or it just starts looking differently and feeling like lighter. So therapy, being able to talk through it, again, reconcile how I'm feeling. But then for me, I've found I do think you need to process that emotion. Like you said, it might take a little while. For me, a goal of mine and how I have noticed in like a lot of things in my life where I've had this tension, it's the speed at which I can move through it now, that I like can recognize it and I'm not like living in that tension. It's like I'm just recognizing it a lot sooner, and like it's like, okay, for me I need to like, yes, like take a step back and meditate, or even like you said, I am doing the coaching now, which has been very insightful, but it's also given me, again, that I guess permission of like, okay, these emotions, they're telling you something, they're feeling. So I've learned a lot of like powerful questioning for that would help with like other like, people, but I also ask those questions to myself. So whether that's like journaling or even just sitting down and meditating for a few minutes and saying like, how do I feel right now? Like, where is this showing up? Is it showing up in like numerous places in my life? And like, what is this telling me? And with that too, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is keeping it on me and myself and what I can change, and not being so focused on like, well, if my job was this way, or if my husband was this way, or if my child just sleep, like how am like I at cause for it? Like what is it that I actually have control over and that I can change? Because if I'm always like waiting on an external factor, whether it's like Bomani to be however many months down the road, like older and sleeping through the night, whether it's
Yeah.
Zarya to like stop having these tantrums and get to 2.5 and like out of these like terrible twos, or Stefan to start doing this. Like if I always am placing my feelings and emotions on all these other external circumstances, it's A, I'm never going to be able to self regulate, and B, there's always going to be something out of whack. So that I forget honestly what your original question was. I think we were
Well,
just
my
talking about
question was,
other
no, no, it
outlets.
was perfect. No, no, no. It was perfect because it triggered so many different thoughts about uh, spaces and places that you went to, and a big one for me, and part of what you were saying is like giving yourself permission to truly one, acknowledge how you're feeling, and then also like catching yourself from placing happiness as this future thing that will
Mm,
come when these certain goals are achieved, or these hurdles are met, or and I just yesterday I went for a massage, and I had a therapist that I had had for a long time, and I hadn't seen him in, actually, it felt like at least over a year, if not two. And so where I'm supposed to be relaxing, we ended up having like therapy and a massage. And we were talking, and one of the things he talked about is that he's in a space where now he's learned how through meditation to get very present and be in the present moment. And he said what he's learned is that our brains are either more inclined to think about a memory of the past or jump ahead to want to think about some future thing that we're planning, wanting, or waiting for. And our I don't know how true or not this is, but it sounded very like a true experience for me often is our brains find the present boring. And so being able to just be in the now is part of why I think it's hard to be grateful. Because if I'm either kind of either regretting or reminiscing some past experience that I can't go back to other than in my mind and my memory, or I'm projecting these goals and things that I have to achieve and hit or wait for these time benchmarks to come, how can I ever be satisfied? How can I just ever feel like content? And I think a big part of being content is being able to be present. This moment right
Absolutely.
now is it. That's all I have right now. It's this. And, being type A, very ambitious women, hopefully the women that are listening are, can resonate and connect with being type A, ambitious. There is so much pressure that I put on myself around the future and needing to do the right things, whatever those things are. I say right in air quotes now so that the future can be what I want it to be. And I think planning and obviously being future oriented, there's time and space and room for that. But there's a lot of angst I've realized going on in me about needing to do a lot and enough now because of this future that I think I'm trying to create. And it causes me, I think, to be discontent with the present because it's all about the future. And the reality is, when I get to that future, if I continue to think this way, I'll be thinking about the future of that future. And so it's always about the next and never about the now. And imagine how much you have to actually slow down to one, be aware of that. And
Right.
then to your point now, reframe, not even just how I'm speaking about it, but how I'm thinking about it. Right? It's like, how
Yeah.
can I be grateful for anything if I'm always thinking about what isn't and what hasn't happened yet, and how much pressure I'm putting on myself about what I need to do now to create this next or future thing. Where is there even room for gratitude? It's almost like gratitude, I think, like you said, is this guilty thing you have to feel that you're supposed to feel. So you say, okay, I'm grateful, but are you grateful?
Right.
If you're not present, how can you be grateful? That's a present emotion. Can't be grateful for what hasn't come yet. So it's a presence thing. And so I think now, so much of what you were saying, I was like, yeah, and this is how you become grateful for the now. Not thinking, I can't wait till she's 2.5. And I got to tell you, newsflash, some of the tantrums are going to exist till 4 or 5. So there's
I
like
mean, I
terrible. You're starting to sense that. Like it might not
was
end until.
yeah. Like there's grown adults that still have tantrums. So I'm like, well, just there's levels and stages to it and everything else. So
Totally. They say like terrible twos and then the threes came and then I was like, well, what's this? What is
yeah,
this?
right.
So don't set yourself up for failure for like, okay, when she turns 3 magically, you were like 2.5. I'm like, wait, no, definitely not 2.5. But yeah, like just being grateful for, and obviously there's not too many people grateful for the tantrums because they're just frustrating. And so I think that's okay, but also just like this is what I have with her now. Just now. Just now. My son is 6 and we put him on the scale on Friday and he's 60 pounds. And I was like,
Oh my
how do you get
goodness.
to be 60 pounds? Like,
Yeah.
you just saw him a few weeks ago, and probably when you see him next, you're going to be like, I swear he got taller. And I think
Yeah.
he's gotten taller. And so it's going by. I remember everybody telling me when he was Bomani size, like, just soak it all up because it goes by quickly. And I've tried to be very present for a lot of it. So I won't say it's been like, where did the last 6 years go? But it's still going by quicker than I would like,
We
even
were
though
at
I've been very intentional about being present.
we
Go
were
ahead.
at Whole Foods the other, just along those lines. We were at Whole Foods the other day, and there was this not a way older, but like older couple who I could tell they were like intently like looking at Zaria, and then we had it was our first outing to the grocery store all together, and they were just like intently looking, and then they stopped us, and they were like, the husband specifically, they have two daughters now, they're in like their 20s and like off at college and stuff, and he was like, just soak it all in. He was like, the days are long, but the years are short. And,
Yes, I've
you know,
actually
it was
heard
just
that.
like, yeah, but just like the memories in that time. So, yes, to your point, that being present, like it's so easy to get caught up in those,
Yep.
all the like either ruminating about the past or the future. Like you can only quote unquote change anything like in this exact moment. And also, what you were saying too, like if you just keep telling yourself to be grateful, and I think there's this idea like, well, if I don't speak it, it doesn't exist. But
Or if
even
I don't
thinking
say
it,
the negative, then I am grateful. It's like, no.
but then it's like, again, it's, I think personally it's way worse because you're ruminating on it, and you're still like vibrating that, you're still like, people can sense, you know what I mean, like you
Yes.
sense it, like even if it's unspoken, it's like, all right, there's something going on with them. Like,
Yes.
so the for me, I guess, which I would say, I was saying, is like the quicker you can get through that, which there are times, I think, depending on the emotion and depending on what it is, certain things might take longer. But that's why the quicker you can like feel it and even just like name that emotion and sit with it, I think better out than in. Like get it out, recognize
Oh,
what it
so
is, and
good.
that actually gives you the in that space to be present. Because if you, you know, like it just doesn't, being present is hard for I think, even I
Yes,
joke, but
say
I was
that
like, I
again.
did,
Being present is hard.
yeah.
We're
Especially
almost
nowadays, like
programmed.
technology,
Yes.
like it's getting harder and harder. And I think, which is also so interesting talking about tantrums, like we expect our children to always like, you know, like it's always like, do this now and be good, and like all these expectations where, like I said, I'm like, I see more grown adults have temper tantrums more than children do on a daily
Yeah.
basis, and they don't know how to regulate themselves, and yet we like expect children this small to regulate their emotions. And I used to teach yoga, and like yoga is still a big part, and it's so interesting, like things I used to say about like the present moment. And I honestly, like after years and years of like teaching and saying certain things and like learning things, I think I might have mentioned before, but I joked, I think I just started understanding it like a year and a half ago. I'm like, oh, that's what that means. Like I finally actually am present, or like I'm like recognizing these thoughts, and I'm like, oh, I'm not actually that thought. Like I'm having that thought, but I don't need to hold on to it and grasp at it and be like, what's wrong with you for thinking this? Like just recognizing
Correct.
like, oh, interesting that you're thinking that. Like let's not, like that's not serving me. Like let's go this direction instead. Um yeah,
What I
but
just
being
thought of
present
was
is very hard.
practicing presence.
Yes.
Okay, my computer's saying consider plugging in your device, so I'll figure that out. Practicing presence. I feel like that's what I'm getting from what you're saying in this
Hmm.
conversation, is that we have to practice being present because our default is to be in the past or the future.
Hmm.
And it takes actual, like, what my I'm gonna call him my therapist in this moment. He was my masseuse, but he was also giving me a therapy session. Um, what he was saying was, your brain is a muscle. It's another organ in your body, and you have to work it out just like
Hmm.
you work out your body. And so, if you don't ever sit with any intentionality about how you want your mind to work, it'll just
Right.
kind of be all over the place and take you in spaces and places that you don't even actually want, but you don't realize how much control and intentionality you can apply to this organ of the body. So I was very
Absolutely.
taken aback by the fact that I was like, I don't know how much I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about, but I
Well,
need to
yeah.
start thinking about. There was a book, right? I think that was called like Think About What You're Thinking About back in the day. Yeah. So what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say with that, like you said, like you're on autopilot. Like it's all like program.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, I don't know who it's. I'm probably paraphrasing someone, but it's like if you take a look at your life right now and like you don't like where it's headed. Well, if you don't like make a new decision or have new thoughts, like you already know where it's headed. It's like look at where you are. You've gotten at this point. Like if you don't put in like new coordinates. Like I like the whole like what is it, a metaphor analogy of like a ship. Like if a ship goes, or
Yeah.
even a plane. Like if you get on a plane and if the pilot doesn't know where they're going, you don't know. You have no clue where you're headed. If you don't put in coordinates, like you're just gonna spin around or like do whatever. So like I would
Yeah.
say most people, if you don't intend, like it takes a lot, like your masseuse therapist said,
I'm my massage therapist.
yeah, that you have to be extremely intentional. Like I think that was one of the biggest takeaways I've had over time, what I've learned. And it's like one of my favorite words is intention. It's actually me and my husband. Like our therapist always brings it up. He's like, I'm going to use one of your guys' favorite words is intention. Because if you aren't intentional, I mean, every day, honestly, I'd say every day and numerous times throughout the day, I have to go back to like, what is my intention? Like, how do I want to feel? Like, how's this day going? Like, how's it gotten derailed either in like how I'm thinking, or I let this one little thing happen and now I've let it completely, like, I've thrown my hands up and like the day's over and it's ruined,
Yeah.
even though it's not. Like, I just need to make a new decision. And it's just been, again, time and time, like if I look back to like years ago to now, of things still happen. I'm just like drastically shortening the time frame
Yeah.
within from of like it happened. And even when I used to get in arguments with my husband, I would take days he wasn't my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, but it would take me days to forgive him. And he'd always be like, just make a new choice, Eden. And I'm like, shut up. Like, I don't want to talk to you. And he'd been going to therapy for a very long time, where I get
Just
it
make a
now. I'm
new
like,
choice.
I understand now, where I'm like, you're right.
That's gonna get you slapped. Stop telling me
Yes.
that.
But now I'm like, I understand. You're right. Like, I actually have control and I just need to change my thought, change my feeling, and make a new choice.
But you
So,
need like a girlfriend to tell you that, not him.
not him. At the moment
Don't you tell me to
I'll
make a
make a
new
new
choice.
choice. It's not going to be the choice you
Right.
want.
Um, okay, so I think we have like hopefully created some spot oxygen in space. That one like made my eyes tear up with laughter thinking about how dare you tell me to make a new choice? I'm gonna like knock your head off. Um, so um hopefully we created some space for you listeners around thinking about, am I grateful? One. And I think somewhere in there, yes, there is absolutely gratitude for being alive, having breath, being able to move, being able to think, walk, talk. There's so much you could be grateful for that we should just not take for granted. And I like the word and not but, because you don't
Right.
want to negate the gratitude and the positives, but you also want to be able to say, and I'm feeling these other things. And one of the points I think Eden made that I really loved was like, the more you do it, the quicker you can move through it. So you want to be able to like acknowledge it, get it out. I think you said better out than in. I wrote that down, right? And it doesn't mean in a negative way. It doesn't mean
No.
like you're vomiting out at the world, but you're getting it out in a healthy way so that it doesn't try to find another way out, because that's a lot of toxic and bad behavior is the results of unspoken pain. And so, what we're really saying is give yourself permission to acknowledge how you're actually feeling so that you can make room for actually feeling the gratitude that's there, but it's being suppressed or it's being crowded out by then maybe not so positive feelings that you're not acknowledging yourself to be aware of, or to give like to say out loud, because you're like, I can't say that because that would mean I'm not grateful. The whole premise of this conversation is I can be grateful and I can also be other things. So I wrote a couple notes. Letting go. These are some of the takeaways. Letting go, giving yourself permission, acknowledging the truth of what you're really feeling, reframing. It's an obligation. You don't want gratitude to feel like an obligation. And I think by doing these other things we're talking about, you can actually truly feel grateful versus like, I'm grateful, I'm grateful, I'm grateful. I am so grateful. You know, that wooden fake way we do it when we think it's what we're supposed to be saying. No judgment, no labels is a big part of just witnessing and acknowledging without saying, I'm bad for feeling these things. And then we want to get off of autopilot. And one of the ways you do that is by being intentional. What I thought of with the analogy that you used, Eden, around pilots, I was thinking about, I think it was a movie that, I forget, some movie I saw where I think it was, yeah, with Idris Alba, and they were trying to signal on the ground that they were being hijacked. I think the movie was called
The
Hijacked.
show, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a limited series with like 4 episodes or whatever. And they were trying to signal to air traffic control they had been hijacked without actually being able to really do that. And so the pilot intentionally changed the coordinates so that they would be a little bit off course. And someone in air traffic control that realized, oh, this is a thing that they learn in training that they can do, that's subtle, that no one else but us are supposed to be able to pick up. But what I remember what was so amazing or interesting about this little technique was if you just get a little bit off course, you can't reach your destination. It was like you would think just a little pivot, like wind or just, other factors should get you back on. It was like just this little degree change could take them where if you're trying to get to London, you're going to end up like in the ocean. And I thought that was so fascinating. And it's not meant to be, we can't be perfect, but to be aware of some of these little ways we can get off course, the more you're aware of it and then you can speak to it, that's how you get back on course. It's the more you just kind of don't acknowledge, you're unaware, you drift. And now you find yourself years later like, how did I get here? You just started drifting and you stopped naming and you stopped acknowledging, and next thing you know, you're not where you wanted to be. And it's like it wasn't intentional, and it was in the absence of intention that you found yourself off course just slightly until you have what I said in an early episode, mission drift. Lost the mission and we drifted. You were gonna say something, Eden.
No, I just love that. Like just the analogy and like
A
visually
little,
thinking about that,
just a
like that little bit,
little bit
because
off course.
and that's where I think again, I keep saying it, but the quicker you can get back on course, because the more you let it go, like you're gonna have to deal with it one way or another. But if you deal with it pretty quickly, it's like there's small little adjustments, but
Yeah.
that tiny little bit, it might be something small, but when you don't address it, like you just said, you're gonna end up completely, I don't know, might be a completely different life, completely different country. Like you're in this whole different place. And now that's a lot of work you need to
Yes.
do to get back. Like it's a ton, or not back, but what to whatever that space is. So I think along with all of this, the other takeaway I'd say is maybe even depending on where you're at and just like your even like self-awareness. Like I think a lot of if you haven't like done that work on yourself or even give yourself that space to be present, give yourself that space to recognize these feelings, it might be completely foreign of like I have no clue what I'm feeling because I don't give myself that space to even go there because that is scary and I don't even want to process how I feel because my whole entire world might come crumbling down around me. And it might, but it might
I've
be
been
for like a
there.
really good thing. So,
I have been there where part of the coping mechanism and strategy for this moment is I can't look at this too clearly, and I can't really speak this out loud in this moment or else I will crumble
yeah. All these plates are
around.
going to come crashing down. Yeah.
Correct. So we're just gonna keep them spinning, even though I'm aware that at some point, I'm gonna have to do something about this. I can't right now, and I think that is okay. Sometimes we have to cope by coasting because we cannot. But to Eden's point, I was delaying my work.
Yeah.
I was just delaying my work. So my battery on my computer, which I'm gonna have to figure out, is telling me it's gonna crash. So we should begin to
Wrap it
wrap this
up.
up anyway. So thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully we have helped you consider grateful and, in a way maybe you haven't before, give yourself permission to have a conversation with yourself and or someone that you love around how you can be honest about grateful ends. Until next time.
Bye.
Remember to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams.